the content here, what you must know as a teacher. This is the first thing we're going to talk about. Then we're going to talk about the best approach. Then we're going to talk about secrets of teaching English as a foreign language. Then we have a section here, or a part at the end, for questions and answers. If you have any questions, you can ask me then. If you have any questions during the session, you can ask me, or you can write in the chat. I'll check your questions in the chat and try to answer them in the right time. So let's go start the first section, which is what you must know as an English teacher. This is just something to think about. As an English teacher, or every English teacher, we have here some titles in the middle, and we have you must know, or every English teacher must know, and every English teacher doesn't need to know. So can we try to think about this for a minute? Which titles go under must know and which titles go under doesn't need to know? If we say teaching methodologies, must know or doesn't need to know?
Must know.
Must know. Let's see. Yeah, okay. So everything English teacher must know teaching methodologies, must know some information, or basic, at least basic information about teaching methodologies. Language acquisition. Here I'm talking about theories of language acquisition, how languages are acquired. Does every English teacher need to know about this?
Yes.
Of course.
Of course, okay. History of English language.
No.
No.
No, you don't need to know. And this was a very annoying subject to study back in college, you know.
Yes. Yes.
Every English teacher must know or doesn't need to know all grammar rules.
Doesn't need to know all of them.
Of course, no one can somehow
Yes.
know all grammar rules. All we need to do is to know how to study them when we need to teach them, how to prepare a lesson. That's it. You don't need to know all grammar rules. Every English teacher must know or doesn't need to know teaching frameworks.
Must know.
Must know.
Okay, so teaching frameworks, we mean like how to teach, for example, reading or listening or speaking. So the steps of teaching reading, for example, like pre-reading and while reading and post-reading. This is what we mean by teaching frameworks. And yes, every English teacher must know teaching frameworks. What about classroom management? Like classroom management techniques and stuff like that?
Yes, that's
I
a
think
big
yes. Yeah, every English teacher must know some classroom management techniques and some knowledge about this. Every English teacher must know or doesn't need to know lesson planning.
Must know.
Must know, of course. Teaching exam classes like IELTS and TOEFL and SAT and ACT and EST and all these things.
Don't need to know them.
Of course. This is like, if you want to become an IELTS trainer, you can do this. You can study for this and become an IELTS trainer. But in order to be an English teacher, you don't have to be an IELTS trainer and TOEFL expert and all these things. You just need to be a good English teacher. If you want to do these things, it's like a different field. Okay. Teaching pronunciation.
Of course, from my point of view.
Yeah, you must know how to teach pronunciation. You must know how to teach grammar. You must know how to teach the 4 skills. Teaching ESP classes. ESP stands for
special purposes.
Yeah, special or specific purposes. English for specific purposes, and it's like IELTS and TOEFL and these things. Like business English and stuff like that, you don't have to know it to become an English teacher. It's good to know if you want to work in this area, but it's not a must for all English teachers to know. Okay, great. So, the TEFL quiz. This is actually, consider it like me pre-teaching vocabulary that I'm going to use later in the coming parts. I just need to make sure that you are familiar with some terms that we're going to use. So I'm going to send you the link in the chat. It's a live worksheet, so you can go to the link and I'll tell you what to do. Let me send it in the chat. Yeah. So the link will take you to this quiz, the TEFL quiz. You will have here, you can see the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we have here some terms and some definitions, and it's a very simple matching activity. All you need to do is just write the letter here. But make sure you write the letter in capital letters. Okay. So for example, this is A or B or C. Write it in capital. I just want you to do part one first. We're going to discuss it together. Then we're going to go to part two later. Okay, so part
Okay.
one first, the first 9 questions. I think it's easier if you read the definition and find the term for it. It's going to be faster. If you read the definition and then find the term for it, it's going to be faster than reading the term and finding the definition. Okay, so let's start with the term here because it's purposeful. The approach, the first one, approach. Which definition is it? You can write your
Uh,
answer in the chat.
can I
I
say
want to
it?
see all answers. You can say it, but I want to see all answers. So maybe write it in the chat, everyone. If you don't know, it's okay. So we have 1C. Anyone else? Another C. ماشي. 1D. حد تاني هيزود؟ طيب تعالوا نشوف approach. الإجابات هنا بتقول C و C و D. نشوف C مثلا. Theories about the nature of language and language learning, which are the source of the way things are done in the classroom. Theories in general. This has an order sequence of techniques. For example, a dictation task. If we're doing a dictation task, it's a task, it's not an approach. So I'm going to go with C here. Approach theories about the nature of language and language learning, which are the source of the way things are done in the classroom. So general theories, and I'm going to go through the 4 of them together: approach, method, procedure, technique, after we match all of them. So what about method? Again, in the chat, tell me your answers. Method. D, 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 E. E تاني. مريم غيرت رأيها. كويس. E, method. Yes, it's E. Method. E, a practical realization of an approach that includes various procedures and techniques. The answer is there actually. It's a practical realization of an approach. هي مش approach، هي realization للapproach، وبتinclude procedures وتكنيكس، فهي ولا procedure ولا technique، هي method. ايه بقى procedures؟ What's a procedure? D. Great. E. A procedure is an ordered sequence of techniques. For example, a dictation task. That's a procedure. And finally, technique. Technique. B. لا احنا لسه في تكنيك. Number 4. ماشي. F. Single activity rather than a sequence, for example, drilling. تعالوا نبص على الأربعة دول أول كده. Let's see. Approach. C. Theories about the nature of language. أنا قلت لكم ليه هبدأ بالترم، علشان دول السيكونس بتاعهم كده from general to specific. Approach is very general. It's the theories, the ideas behind what you do in the classroom. Okay, so the theories about the nature of language and language learning and language acquisition and stuff like that. And this is the source of the things we do in the classroom, the main source. After the approach, we have a method. The method is more specific, which is a realization of an approach. We have ideas in the approach and we start applying those ideas in a practical way. So it's a practical realization of an approach that includes various procedures and techniques. How to apply the ideas we have in an approach. We apply them using a method, and this method includes procedures and techniques. The procedure here, D, an ordered sequence of techniques. For example, a task, a dictation task, or any task that includes more than one technique, because you have to give instructions, set the task, then students do the task, and while they are doing the task, you monitor them. And after they do the task, you start giving feedback. So have more than one thing to do here. So in this manner, the procedure includes many techniques. So what is a technique? A technique is a single activity rather than a sequence. It's not a sequence. For example, drilling, that's a technique. What do we do? I say the word, you say it after me. I say it, you say it. I say it, you say it. That's one thing. So that's a technique. Sometimes teachers use their fingers, for example, to teach grammar, to teach the structure of a sentence. That's a technique. Error correction. When you try to correct some errors, that's why we call them error correction techniques. It's one thing. Okay. So now that's the difference between an approach, a method, a procedure, and a technique. Going next to the next one, grammar translation. This is one of the most famous methods that we know. And this is letter B. Yes. Grammar translation. Students learn grammatical rules and then apply those rules by translating sentences between the target language and the native language. This is the way that people hate, and people call it old. and ancient and stuff like that. I don't like hating methods or approaches or anything. Um, it's not suitable for many situations, okay, but it's there. It's a way. It exists, okay. So in this method, grammar translation, the teacher depends on translating grammar rules or teaching the students grammar rules, then translating sentences between the native language and the target language, between Arabic and English, for example. So next we have language acquisition. And what do we mean by language acquisition? A, of course, thank you. Language acquisition, to subconsciously pick up a language, simply absorbing it by, for example, living in a target language community with no formal attention to language study. So uh, you don't study the language consciously. It's something that happens subconsciously. You pick up a language by, for example, living in another country, and you start picking up the language. What about language learning, which is different from language acquisition? Because yes, letter I, which is to organize your learning and apply your knowledge to consciously learn a language. So language acquisition happens subconsciously. You pick up a language. Language learning happens consciously because you organize your learning and you apply your knowledge to learn something. Audiolingualism. H, perfect. Audiolingualism is a method of teaching that relied heavily on drills, based on the idea that languages are learned through habit formation. So this is a method like grammar translation, but this one it relied or depended on drills. You say something and you let your students repeat it. Like for example, the videos you see now for teachers uh, singing with the students to let them learn something, not just a language. People use it in everything. في العربي مثلا بتلاقوا مدرس ماسك الطلبة عنده في الدرس وعمال يقول لهم إن فتحة ضمة كسرة حط كده يعني. فده هو المبني على الاوديولينجواليزم اللي هي حاجة بتعتمد على الدريلز. It's a method that depends on drilling. Okay. Why? Because they believed that languages are learned through habit formation. It's like forming a habit. When you start listening and repeating, listening and repeating, listening and repeating, it becomes like a habit to you. Uh, okay. The last one here, PPP. Of course, this is G. In this procedure, so PPP, people know it as a framework or a procedure. And in this procedure or in this framework, the teacher presents the target language in a context. Students then practice the language and finally produce their own sentences. So think of it as a structure for your lesson or as a framework. You start with presenting the target language. You have a context. You present the target language through this context. Then you start making the students practice the target language. And finally, they produce their own sentences or their own production using the target language that they have learned throughout the lesson. Okay, perfect. Any questions regarding the first 9 terms here before we go to part 2? No questions? Great. Okay, so let's go to part 2. And I'm going to give you again 5 minutes. Try to do it alone first. Then we're going to go through them one by one together. Let's see. For number 10 here, communicative language teaching or CLT. Which one is it? Okay. Okay. Approach in which students are involved in realistic situations in which they need to communicate. Very good. Cooperative learning, CL. Okay. An instructional method in which students work in small groups to accomplish a common learning goal under the guidance of the teacher. Cooperative learning depends on making the students learn together, most of the time in groups, and we apply different ways to make them work together. Um, yeah, sure. I'm going to share the session. Um after we finish. Yes, I'm going to share the session with everyone. Don't worry. Uh, Next, we have task-based learning, TBL. J, task-based learning. Where's J? Yeah, to make the performance of meaningful tasks central to the learning process. And we're going to go back to these things again in the coming parts. Now, the lexical approach, L. And instead of teaching grammar and vocabulary, we should teach multi-word prefabricated chunks or lexical chunks. That's the lexical approach. Great. You have good knowledge here. I thought many people won't know about these things, but you're doing great. Suggestopedia. Okay. A method that is concerned above all with the physical environment in which the learning takes place. Students need to be comfortable and relaxed. Great. Suggestopedia. Next, we have total physical response. Of course, this one is easy. TPR. N طبعا الناس بتوع الكيدز أول ناس دخلوا على طول. N total physical response, a method of teaching language or vocabulary concepts by using physical movement to react to verbal input. طبعا الناس بتوع الكيدز قاعدين يتشقلبوا في الكلاسز طول النهار فهم اكتر ناس عارفين التوتال physical response يعني. True. CCQs. Q. شفتوا لخبطتكم انا بقى عملت سي سي كيوز واي سي كيوز وعملت دي كيو ودي بي عشان تبقى ايه مختلفه ما يبقاش قدامها على طول. ف CCQs هي Q questions that you ask to make sure the students understand the meaning of the target language. انما ICQs اللي هي instructions checking questions. طبعا CCQs هي concept checking questions. Instructions checking questions اللي هي P questions that you ask to make sure the students understand your instructions. Finally, ECD W, which is O, yes, a procedure used in teaching vocabulary that includes eliciting, E, concept checking, C, drilling, D, writing, W, or the spelling. Yeah. The sequence بنمشي عليه while teaching vocabulary. Start with eliciting the word, then making sure everyone understands the meaning, then drilling the pronunciation, then writing. Okay, now that we established the ground that we're going to build on in this session, I wanted just, yeah, as Mariam says here, I just wanted to refresh your memories about those things. Or maybe if there's something that you didn't know before, now you know it. Now we can go back to our presentation. Let me share the screen again. Okay, so for people who joined late, this is the first thing we talked about here. Every English teacher must know teaching methodologies, language acquisition, teaching frameworks, classroom management techniques, lesson planning, teaching pronunciation, teaching grammar, teaching the four skills. But you don't need to know, as an English teacher, you don't need to know the history of the English language. You don't need to know all grammar rules. You just need to know how to prepare a grammar lesson. You don't need to know about teaching exam classes like IELTS and TOEFL and SAT, etc. If you want to teach IELTS, you can study and become an IELTS trainer, but you don't need to know this in order to be an English teacher. Also, teaching ESP classes, which stands for English for Special or Specific Purposes. This is also like IELTS. If you want to teach it, you just study for it and you become a trainer. It's okay, يعني, for English teachers, but you don't have to know it to become a good English teacher. Then we took the TEFL quiz just to refresh your memory about the terms that we saw now in the live worksheet. Let's go next. In this part, we're going to talk about methodology, acquisition, and frameworks. And let me start by this simple question for you. What are the steps or the framework of teaching vocabulary? If you're going to teach a vocabulary lesson, what are the steps you should follow? Can you write in the chat?
Like from the brainstorming, the lead in, and all this stuff.
Yeah. The framework, lead in, yeah, the first step, activating
Yeah.
or schema activation, as Mahmoud said.
Yes.
Yes, this is like a lead in. We mainly have like four main steps here, four or five, I don't remember, but mainly, yeah, four. Remember, yeah, Shuruk, this is a vocabulary lesson. So, what are the steps of framework of teaching vocabulary?
Is it about the ECDW?
ECDW is just part of it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Like we give them the pictures and this stuff. I don't remember like the what
you
we
forgot.
say
You
that they
forgot that.
say. Yes.
Yeah, I know. When we start working for long days, yeah, we forget about the basics.
Yeah.
Let's say PPP. Okay.
Mm.
Lead in, exposure, highlighting, clarification, control, practice, repractice. Perfect. That's very nice. Lead in, exposure, highlight, teaching, practice, tasks, and free. ماشي. TTT, of course, we can use it. طيب, I'm here. يعني I have here the very basic thing that we usually do, which is a lead in. We start with a lead in, then we present. We present the target language following the ECDW sequence, which is eliciting the words, then checking if they understand the meaning of it, then drilling pronunciation, then showing the written form of the word. Then after we present all the words that we have, we give them a controlled practice. They start uh, practicing the vocabulary items, and then we have free practice. Um, so this is the very basic framework for teaching vocabulary: lead in, presentation, controlled practice, free practice, which can be also like PPP, like presenting and then practicing and then production. But what I want to tell you here, I'm not here to teach you the framework. All English teachers know about the framework of teaching vocabulary. I'm here to talk about the bigger picture, and I want you to start thinking about frameworks of teaching vocabulary or grammar, or how to teach listening, how to teach speaking, all of these frameworks. I want you to start looking at the bigger picture, and I'm here to change your mindset about this. If we look at the bigger picture, we know that we are talking here about this, about the frameworks, the one on the bottom here. Can I highlight it? Watercolor brush. Okay. We are talking about frameworks, right? How to teach grammar, how to teach receptive skills, how to teach vocabulary, like the one we talked about now. So we are talking about this, but we forget about this and this. We always forget about those two. Why? Uh, Frameworks, like the one we just talked about in teaching vocabulary, they come from a background. And this background is approaches and methods and techniques, the ones we talked about in the beginning of the live worksheet, like grammar translation method, like communicative language teaching, like audiolingualism, like task-based learning. All of these things, all of these approaches and methods and techniques, they generate frameworks, okay? And those approaches and methods and techniques, they come from the theories of language acquisition and language learning, like behaviorism, or habit formation, which said that learning a language happens through forming habits. So we started using audiolingualism. So this gave life to this audiolingualism. And from audiolingualism, we started drilling, or we put the drilling technique inside our frameworks. So we need to start thinking about these two, not just the last part, not just the frameworks, not just the last product. Think about how it came to life, okay? Also, critical period hypothesis or comprehensible input, all of these theories of language acquisition and language learning, uh, they were the base for some approaches and methods and techniques, and those approaches and methods and techniques generated the frameworks that we study today, or that we use today in teaching. So if we talk about teaching vocabulary framework, the one that we talked about now, we start with a lead-in to set the context and to engage students and activate their prior knowledge, right? This can be traced back to communicative language teaching, because as we said before, in communicative language teaching, you need a context. You need to set a realistic context to put the students in real situations in which they can use the language. So why do we set the context in the lead-in? Because we need to follow the communicative way. Why do we follow the communicative way? Because it's one of the theories that says that language acquisition or language learning happens in real life situations. Okay. Also, we need to engage the students and activate their prior knowledge, the knowledge they already have, because this is based on the comprehensible input theory. This theory says that in order to learn a language, or learning the language happens by adding something to the information the students already have. So they have information, which is I, plus one, plus something I want to add for the students to learn on, or in addition to the information they have. Okay, so that's why we start with a lead-in, and that's why we set a context, because of the communicative language teaching approach. And that's why we try to activate their prior knowledge, because we want to add to this prior knowledge. That's the comprehensible input theory. When we present the language using eliciting and concept checking and drilling and writing, this can be traced back to comprehensible input again, because we want to add, we elicit from the students the word, because maybe they know part of the meaning, but they don't know the whole meaning. So I want to add information about it. So when we say comprehensible input, think about it. I remember the word cocktail, when I first learned that this word actually means an alcoholic drink. Okay, so when the teacher asks, "Do you know what is this?" with a drink on a picture of a drink, and I start eliciting the name of it, and a student says cocktail. Okay, good. Now you know the word, right? Okay, let me ask you a question. Concept checking questions. Does it contain alcohol? When a student says no, it's just a mix of fruits, I say no. So what the students know is that a cocktail is just a drink, a mix of fruits. Now, for me to teach them, I need to add a piece of information to this. So I tell them, no, it actually contains alcohol, because if it doesn't contain alcohol, it's not called a cocktail. So concept checking here, eliciting and concept checking, ECDW, eliciting and concept checking is based on the comprehensible input theory. Okay. Now, culture-based questions. Yes, very good. Culture awareness comes here as well. Now, what I'm talking about is, due to the cultural awareness, they don't know this piece of information. So when you add it to the information they already know, that's based, why do we do this? That's based on the comprehensible input theory. And then we start drilling the pronunciation of the word. And this is based on, as we said before, audiolingualism or habit formation. But here, I'm not using audiolingualism to teach everything. I'm just using it in this technique, in this part, drilling. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. I don't want a teacher who knows just the frameworks. Okay, this is why at the beginning of the session I said every English teacher must know methodologies. And by methodologies, I didn't mean just the frameworks. Every English teacher knows how to teach speaking, reading, writing, listening. Okay, that's good frameworks. Now, do you know why we have these frameworks? And by the way, this is these are the two different levels in teacher training courses. If you study TEFL or CELTA, you're going to study the frameworks. If you go for the next level, diploma, the TEFL, Delta, you're going to study the theories, the methodology, the things that we're talking about now, like comprehensible input and audiolingualism and communicative language teaching, grammar translation, all this. This is the next level. And we're going to talk about this next. Let's continue. For controlled practice, again, we go for communicative language teaching and cooperative learning if we use activities that involves the students to work in groups. So in that case, we are talking about cooperative learning. It depends on how you practice or how you prepare for your controlled practice activity. It can be both communicative and cooperative. Also, free practice, the same. It can be communicative, it can be cooperative. It's based on this. This is the source. So parts on the right, this is the source for the framework. Here, what I'm telling you is how this framework is or how it came to life. Why do we follow this framework or any other framework? If you think about it, teaching listening, teaching speaking, you can apply the same ideas. You will always find theories and ideas behind any framework of teaching the language. Finally, in the feedback, or after each stage, actually, after each task, you give feedback. In this feedback, you might need to correct some errors, right? Then we start thinking about error correction techniques, and you shouldn't mention the name of the student directly. You shouldn't point to a student like that when you correct mistakes. All of these things, they aim at creating a safe environment for the students to learn and not to be afraid to make mistakes. And when we talk about a safe environment, we are talking about Suggestopedia. We want the students to feel comfortable in the classroom. We don't want them to be afraid. We also here are talking about comprehensible input because, again, when I correct mistakes, I have a piece of information that the students know, and I try to add something new to it, to this piece of information. So here, feedback, error correction is based on comprehensible input, and the way you do it serves Suggestopedia, which is how you want your students to be feeling inside the classroom. You want them to be comfortable, relaxed, not afraid of making mistakes. So this is the bigger picture I'm talking about. When you think about a framework of teaching vocabulary, that's that simple. You have in a table, you have lead-in, presentation, control practice, free practice. But when you think about it in a different way, when you think that this framework came from an approach or a method or different approaches and methods and techniques, and those approaches and methods and techniques came from theories of language acquisition and language learning, then you can understand the reason behind this framework. Okay. So what is the best approach? Yeah, I mean, we talked about communicative and cooperative and audiolinguism and grammar translation and many approaches and methods here. What's the best one so I can use it and forget about the others? Well, teaching methodologies, they are important. That's why I said they are crucial. You need to understand them to be a good English teacher. You must know them. Let's talk about, for example, the communicative approach. It emphasizes communication as the primary goal of language learning. So communication is the goal here. While on the other hand, task-based learning focuses on real-life tasks to develop language skills. Like in a task-based learning lesson, you have pre-task, you have the task itself, presentation, task planning, and then you have the review for the task, etc. So this one, communicative approach, it focuses on communication. That's the main goal. Here, doing a task, that's the main goal. And a task here is not like a matching task, for example. Oh, a task it's a bigger task. Like, for example, we need to plan a holiday. For example, we're traveling to another country, so you need to plan for this holiday. So that's our task. We start planning for the task. We start having ideas and brainstorming ideas. Then we start thinking about the language we need. For example, to book the tickets, to book a room, and etc. So it's based on a task. The grammar translation method, on the other hand, emphasizes grammar rules and translation, obviously. The communicative approach is effective in developing speaking and listening skills, but may not provide enough focus on grammar. Sometimes you don't focus enough on grammar if you're using the communicative approach. Task-based learning is engaging and practical, but may not be suitable for all levels or types of learners, because it might be difficult for lower level students sometimes, and it's not suitable for all types of learners. The grammar translation method can be useful for building a strong foundation in grammar, but may not be effective in developing communication skills. So, unlike the communicative approach, which focuses on communication skills, the grammar translation method forgets about communication skills at all. So why am I saying all this? Because by understanding the strengths and weaknesses of each method, teachers can create more effective and engaging lessons that meet the needs of their students. So, after all what I said here, what do you think is the best approach? There is a name for it, and I haven't mentioned this name until now. Does anyone know? Okay. We call this an eclectic approach. An eclectic approach is using the best part of each approach that you know in your lesson. So you're not following one approach. This is not right. When we teach English, we don't follow. I'm not teaching this class using just the communicative approach. No, I'm not using just the grammar translation method. I'm not using just task-based learning in this course. No. An eclectic approach is an approach in which you collect and you make your own approach based on your understanding of the strengths and weaknesses of each method. So the target language that I have in today's lesson, the target language is about, for example, making a reservation or going to a restaurant or something like that. So it's something that I can use the communicative approach in this session to teach, and I can add some parts of grammar here because the communicative approach doesn't put enough focus on grammar. So I'm going to put some grammar there because I know this is one of the weaknesses of this method. So by understanding the methods and approaches, you can make your lessons a lot better. But if you just keep following the frameworks, you're going to be a good teacher. I'm not saying it's bad, but sometimes you're going to feel stuck and you will not know what to do. And this is coming in the next part that we're going to see it. And this part is related to the secrets of TEFL here, the secrets of teaching English as a foreign language, the ideas I want to share with you today after, of course, the previous ideas. The first thing is an important question that I know most people think about. I took the TEFL or CELTA course and I only learned about frameworks and techniques. Isn't this enough? Why is it a must for English teachers to have such deep knowledge? Okay, so you took the TEFL, you took the CELTA, you learned about the frameworks that we talked about, and they told you that this is enough now, you can be a good English teacher. Why am I saying that it's a must for English teachers to have such deep knowledge? Yeah, let me answer the question. The answer to the first question is, if you took the TEFL or CELTA and learned about the frameworks and technique, isn't this enough? Well, why do they just teach the frameworks? First, it's about time. Okay, so it's a fast-paced world now. We need to be ready to start working quickly. So if you go take a course and they tell you the course takes like a year, it's very difficult. But when I tell you come and take the intensive CELTA course, it's just 1 month and you're ready to go, you're ready to become a teacher, well, that's better. So how can I prepare an English teacher in just 1 month? Well, teach them the frameworks, make them practice teaching in TPs, and give them feedback. And that's it. Okay. Also, it can be about business because you finished your TEFL, take a CELTA. You finished your CELTA, take a Delta. Everything is about business. So I'm saying business is a part of it here. If I give you all the information in a CELTA course, for example, it's going to take a long time. That's why I said it's about time in the beginning. And I will not have extra information to give you in another course that costs a fortune. So why give you everything in the CELTA? I can make you start your career by giving you the basics, the frameworks, and you start teaching, and then tell you if you want to go further and you want more professional development, you can pay and take the Delta. So it's about business as well. Now, the answer to the second question, why is it a must for English teachers to have such deeper knowledge? Because you need to be flexible. It's not always going to be a perfect class that goes just as planned. So don't be afraid to change the holy frameworks put by the gods of Cambridge. Okay? Your lesson is not going to be always perfect. I planned everything for my session. I start teaching, and I find that the way I'm following, the approach or the method I'm following or the framework I'm following is not suitable for my students. I am not getting the results I want. So, if you understand the methods and the ideas and the techniques and the procedures and everything, you can be more flexible. You can try something new. On the spot, you can think about another activity that can work because this one doesn't work. So, another activity with another approach, another theory here. So, for example, I'm using the communicative approach. I want my students to be engaged in a real life situation. So I give them a role play task. I want them to start talking to each other to achieve something here. Like talk to each other, and you pretend to be a receptionist, you pretend to be a customer, talk to each other. Now, this is not working because my students, for example, are very shy, or it's not working for any reason. I need to understand the reason, then think about another way that avoids this reason. For example, they are shy, they are very shy, they are not talking. So here, I think about Suggestipedia. I think about why are they shy? Because they don't feel safe in the class, or they're not comfortable enough. They're not relaxed. So I try to think about a way that makes them feel more comfortable and more relaxed and more confident to speak. Okay. If I don't know about this, I'll just keep trying to make them speak, and they will not speak because they are afraid or they're shy or whatever, and I don't have anything else to try. So I'm stuck. You see what I mean here? So that's why I'm saying it's a must for every good English teacher to know the methodologies and to know the approaches and everything, because it makes you flexible. Now, how do I learn about these things? Um, this is just my, yani, my thinking of or my ideas about how to plan for this. First, find a good reading list and start your free professional development. Because as it says in the title here, you do all the work anyways. If you go and take a Delta or a diploma or a DEPTIS or whatever, it's you doing most of the work. Or even a master's, you have to read, you have a reading list, and you have to read books, and you have to research, and you have to do a lot of things. Why not do this alone? You see, people take these courses just for the certificates, just for the piece of paper that gets them jobs. But if you want the knowledge, you can have it. I'm not saying the certificates are not important. They are, because they make you go and work in universities and things like that. But if you want the knowledge, you can have it for free. Okay, so take a TEFL or CELTA. That's the first step. That's important because this is something you cannot do alone. If you're going to start your teaching career, you have to take the TEFL or the CELTA because you need to do the teaching practice part. Of course, you teach, you get feedback. That's very important. But after this, once you start working, once you start your career as an English teacher, you can start your free professional development right away. Just find books to read about teaching. Find the reading list for the Delta, for example. If you Google a reading list for Delta, you will find the books that they have to read there. Download the books and start reading them. Or attend professional development sessions or conferences that are free. You can use peer observation, observe other teachers, and let other teachers observe you and get feedback from them. Many ways that you can use to do free professional development. Finally, if you want to take courses just for the certificates, you can do it. You can take your Delta or TEFL or whatever just for the certificates. But if you already have the knowledge, it's going to be a lot easier and you can have the knowledge for free. Okay, let's talk about another secret here. Work smart. When I first started teaching, I went from spending long hours preparing my lessons to preparing lessons in under 10 minutes. How did I do that? I don't have to reinvent the wheel. All I do is I don't create when I can search and edit. Uh, these are just some examples of websites that I use in my teaching personally. I use Fluentize a lot. It has full lessons. Some lessons are free, some lessons you can buy. I use Kahoot a lot. It's my favorite website. Lyrics training, I use it a lot for listening practice. SlideShare, you can find a lot of free presentations and slides there. Live worksheets, the one we used in the matching task that we had, you can find many free worksheets there. And there are many other websites that you can find what you need on. So you don't have to create everything yourself. You can search and find the things and edit things, and this is going to save a lot of time for you. And time is very precious in this career. So always search for smart ways to do things without wasting time. So don't create things when you can search and edit. Another secret that I want to share with you is you must always know your audience. There is what you want to say, and there is what they are interested in. They are your students. And there is relevance. Relevance is what's in between what you want to say and what they are interested in. So try to make this relevance bigger. Try to go towards what your students are interested in, not what you want to say as a teacher, because it's not about you. It's not about your ideas. Forget about yourself. It's about the students. What are they interested in? What they want to talk about, and what makes them interested in your lessons. The show. Be creative, but be efficient. It's important to do creative and fun activities. They always want a show, but remember that they also want results. So they here, we're talking about employers, we're talking about teaching institutions. If you are teaching in a language teaching center or a school or a university or whatever, you know, as English teachers, that they always want to show. They always want you to be creative. They always want you to use creative ways. كان في حد مرة قال لي عايزين نشقلب الكلاس كده وبتاع، يعني كان الناس بتستخدم أول ما بدأت تدريس كان الحقيقة الناس بتستخدم تعبيرات very interesting، يعني عشان يقولوا إن هم عايزين الشو ده، عايزين بقى شقلباظات وحاجات زي كده. فإحنا عارفين إن هو people or employers or مش كلهم طبعا بس عدد كبير محتاج الشو. and this show actually is important. يعني خليني اقول لكم ان هو حاجه مهمه فعلا، لانه بيفرق مع الستودنتس في الناحيه اللي احنا اتكلمنا فيها من شويه. اتكلمنا عن suggestipedia وان احنا عايزين الستودنتس يفيل comfortable، ومعروف انه الاتيتيود بتاع الستودنتس towards the language is important. فانا عايزهم يبقوا interested، فعشان يبقوا interested محتاج show. الشو مهم، بس اللي انا بتكلم عنه هنا انه ما يبقاش show for the sake of show. ما يبقاش بس show عشان اعمل منظر وخلاص، لا. لانه الناس دي كلها مهما كانت مهتمة بالشو، لو ما فيش results فكل ده على الفاضي. اوكي. ف the show is important but results are also important. ف don't forget about results for the sake of the show. Okay. That's the last thing that I wanted to share with you. And of course, feel free to ask about anything if you have any questions. This is the time for them. Do you need to ask about anything? Do you have any questions?
I have a question, like it's a stupid one, but I have it.
Sure.
Okay. ECDW and CCQs and ICQs, they are procedures or techniques or another thing? Yani from the things you've listed in the very beginning of the session.
Yeah, if it's a sequence, like ECDW, that's a sequence. Eliciting, then concept checking, then drilling, then writing. So if it's a sequence, it's a procedure. Okay? But
Yes.
asking ICQs, for example, asking instructions, checking questions, that's a technique. So if you do one thing, I'm just going to ask a question and they answer. If it's one thing, that's a technique. If it's a sequence, you need to do more than one thing. That's a procedure.
Procedures. Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, any other questions? ما تتخضوش من الصورة يا جماعة، اسألوا عادي مش. Great. طيب مفيش questions. Thank you for attending the session. I'm really happy to meet you all today. And just one last thing. Next Thursday, inshallah, we have another session called Being the Devil's Advocate. It's about encouraging your students to speak more. So we're going to talk about teaching speaking and how can you encourage your students to speak more in the classroom. So next Thursday at 10 p.m. if you are free, attend this session. It's going to be nice. Thank you all for attending. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm really happy to see you all here today. And I hope to see you all again, inshallah.
Thank you, Kareem.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.